All right, so are we ready for this? We're diving deep into one of those questions that just never gets old, you know? Are humans, like, deep down good? Or are we all kind of secretly selfish?
Yeah, well, secretly or not so secretly, right? I mean, it's a question that's been bugging philosophers and theologians and, I don't know, just about everyone, really, for centuries.
And we're tackling it with, oh, wow, we've got a crazy mix of sources here. We've got primate studies and evolutionary biology, a bit of philosophy sprinkled in, and even one of those classic psychology experiments that kind of makes you question everything you thought you knew about people.
Oh, yeah, the one that always gives me the chills.
Exactly. So yeah, buckle up, everyone. It's going to be a wild ride.
I think what makes this question so fascinating and maybe a little unnerving, too, is that it's not just some theoretical head-scratcher, you know? It really gets to the heart of how we see the world, how we build our societies, even how we interact with each other on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so the stakes are high then.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. If we genuinely believe humans are inherently good, maybe we approach things like crime and punishment totally differently, right? More emphasis on rehabilitation, less on, locking people up and throwing away the key.
But if we're all just selfish jerks deep down.
Well, then maybe you need stricter laws, harsher consequences, that kind of thing, to keep everyone in line.
Makes sense. But okay, let's get down to brass tacks here. Where do we even start unpacking this whole good versus evil conundrum? I'm noticing a lot of our sources focus on primates. Are we seriously going to find answers about human nature by watching monkeys groom each other? I mean, is that it?
Well, you might be surprised, actually. Studying our primate cousins, like chimpanzees, gives us this really unique window into the origins of social behavior. We can see how they form these intricate social hierarchies, the alliances, the power struggles, and yes, even glimmers of empathy and fairness.
Hold up chimps with empathy. Now, I've heard it all. Isn't it all just survival of the fittest out there in the animal kingdom? I mean, dog-eat-dog world and all that.
Yeah, sure, survival of the fittest is definitely a thing. But it doesn't always have to mean this cutthroat competition, For social animals like primates, cooperation can be just as important for survival as competition, sometimes even more so.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, and there's this great example in one of our sources where researchers observed chimps actually consoling each other after a fight.
Oh, that's kind of sweet.
It is. It suggests they have at least some understanding that their fellow chimp is feeling distressed and they're trying to comfort them.
Wow, okay, I'm starting to see your point. But come on, we can't forget about all that aggression too, right?
Yeah.
Chimps are known to get pretty vicious when it comes to protecting their turf or, fighting over mates.
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely a dark side to chimp behavior, no doubt about it. They can be aggressive, violent, even.
Tooth and claw.
Yeah, exactly. But what's so interesting is that even within those power struggles, there are these hints of what we might call morality, or at least a sense of fairness.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Sure. So one of our sources talks about this study where researchers were observing how chimps share meat after a hunt. And what they found was that those chimps who cooperated in the hunt were much more likely to share the spoils with each other.
Makes sense.
Right, but those who didn't participate well, they often got left out in the cold.
So even chimps have a sense of like, hey, you didn't contribute, you don't get to eat. That's amazing.
Right. It's like a very primal version of fairness, and it suggests that maybe the roots of our own sense of justice go way, way back.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. But here's the thing. If chimps can show empathy and fairness, then why are humans so messed up? I mean, we've got wars and genocide and just endless examples of people exploiting each other. It's not exactly a glowing endorsement for the whole inherent goodness of humanity argument, is it?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it leads us perfectly to the next layer of our deep dive, the evolution of morality in humans. Did our conscience just poof, magically appear one day, or does it have deeper evolutionary roots that we can trace back through our primate ancestors?
Well, one theory I'm seeing pop up a lot in our sources is this idea that early human groups were super reliant on cooperation for survival.
Yeah.
Think about it, hunting those massive woolly mammoths or fending off saber-toothed tigers. You couldn't do that alone. You needed everyone to work together or you were toast.
Exactly. And in those early cooperative groups, anyone who was constantly slacking off or, violating those social norms, well, they would have been a huge liability.
Like dead weight, literally.
Right. So punishing those individuals, the deviants might have been a way to enforce cooperation to ensure the group's survival.
It's like tough love, prehistoric style.
Yeah.
Look, buddy, either pull your weight or hit the road. We've got mammoths to hunt.
Exactly. And there's actually evidence that this kind of moralistic aggression, as some researchers call it, was a major driving force in shaping our sense of morality. There's that fascinating anecdote from a study of the Kung people in the Kalahari Desert.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that. A researcher observed this woman, she was scolding another woman for trying to breastfeed a baby that wasn't hers. It seems like such a small thing, but it speaks volumes about how important fairness and following those social norms were in these small, tight-knit communities.
Absolutely. And what's even more interesting is that we see these similar patterns of punishment for violating social norms in other primates too.
Really?
Yeah, so this idea of punishing those who don't play by the rules, it might be a very ancient evolutionary strategy that laid the groundwork for our more complex sense of morality.
Okay, but hold on a sec. If morality is all about punishment, wouldn't that mean we're only acting good out of fear? Like we're only being moral because we don't want to get in trouble.
That's a really good point. And it brings us to a whole other dimension of this question, the power of meaning. We have a few sources here, especially the work of Viktor Frankl.
Oh, yeah, the guy who survived the Nazi concentration camps.
Yeah.
And wrote Man's Search for Meaning.
Exactly. Frankl's experience, as horrific as it was, led him to this incredibly powerful insight that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, humans have this incredible capacity to find meaning and purpose.
Oh, yeah.
And this search for meaning, he argues, can be an incredible source of strength and resilience.
Okay, that's pretty deep stuff. But how does it connect to this whole good versus evil debate?
Well, Frankl's concept of logotherapy suggests that this search for meaning is a fundamental human drive, maybe even stronger than the drive for pleasure or power.
Interesting.
And this striving for something beyond just our own survival could be seen as a powerful argument for the inherent goodness of humanity.
So it's not just about avoiding pain or seeking pleasure. It's about finding something bigger than ourselves, something that gives our lives purpose.
Exactly. And that raises a really fascinating question. Could this capacity for finding meaning, even in the darkest of circumstances, point to a deeper well of goodness within us?
Man, this is heavy stuff. We've gone from chimps sharing meat to concentration camp survivors finding meaning in suffering. It's a lot to process.
It is, and we're not done yet. There's another crucial piece of the puzzle we need to look at, the Milgram experiment. This one might challenge our rosy view of human nature a bit.
Oh, yeah, the Milgram experiment. I've heard about that one.
Yeah.
Isn't it about people shocking each other?
It is, and it reveals some pretty uncomfortable truths about obedience to authority.
Okay, well, let's dive into that. But first, I need a minute to catch my breath. We'll be back in a flash to explore the darker side of human nature. Stay with us. Okay, we're back and ready to tackle this Milgram experiment. The one that always leaves me feeling a little bit uneasy, like we're about to peek into some dark corner of human nature.
It can be a bit unsettling, yeah. But it's so important, that the Milgram experiment really forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about how easily we can be swayed to obey, even when it goes against our own moral compass.
Right, yeah. For those who haven't heard of it, could you give us like a quick recap of what actually went down in this experiment?
Sure. So basically, participants were told they were part of a study about learning and memory, pretty harmless stuff.
Right.
And they were instructed to administer electric shocks to another person, the learner, whenever they got an answer wrong. And the shocks, they would increase in intensity with each wrong answer. And the learner, who is actually an actor, of course, would scream and plead for them to stop.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So even just hearing about it is making me feel a little anxious.
Yeah.
But the shocks, they weren't real, right?
Exactly. The learner wasn't actually being harmed, but the participants, they believed the shocks were real. And that's where things get really, really interesting, or disturbing, depending on how you look at it.
Because people went along with it.
Right.
They actually kept shocking the learner.
Yeah. Despite the learner's cries of pain, a majority of participants obeyed the experimenter's instructions and continued administering shocks even up to the highest levels.
Wow. So even though they were clearly uncomfortable,
Yeah.
they still chose to obey the authority figure. That's kind of terrifying when you really think about it.
It is. It shows how powerful the influence of authority can be, even when it clashes with our own sense of right and wrong.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if we're all capable of that kind of blind obedience. Does it mean Hobbes was right? Like, are we all just one strong authority figure away from turning into monsters?
The Milgram experiment definitely adds another layer of complexity to our understanding of human nature. But I don't think it necessarily means we're all inherently evil. It highlights the powerful influence of situational factors.
So it's not just about our internal compass, but also about the external pressures we're facing.
Exactly. Think about it. The participants in the Milgram experiment, they were in a very specific situation, a controlled environment with an authority figure urging them on. And that context can have a huge impact on our behavior.
Right. It's like in that particular scenario, obedience became the default mode, even if it meant overriding their own sense of morality.
Yeah, and this raises some really important questions about how we design our institutions, our hierarchies. How do we ensure that authority is used ethically and responsibly? How do we empower individuals to question orders, especially when they feel something is wrong?
Those are great questions, but where do we go from here? I mean, we've explored empathy, cooperation, the power of meaning, and now the dangers of blind obedience. It's a lot to take in.
It is. And there are even more perspectives to consider. Remember, we're trying to get a handle on this big question. Are humans fundamentally good? We've looked at primate behavior, the evolution of morality, and even the dark side of obedience. But we can't forget about the role of biology.
Oh, right. Hormones, brain chemistry, that whole messy world.
Exactly. We've got sources here that delve into how all that might be influencing our behavior. So are we just puppets to our hormones? Are our actions predetermined by our biology?
Right. Like, is there a goodness gene or a selfishness hormone or something?
No, it's definitely not that simple. Biology plays a role, for sure, but it's not this straightforward cause and effect relationship. Our brains are complex, dynamic systems constantly interacting with our environment.
Okay, so it's more nuanced than that.
Much more. But there are certain chemicals in our brains that play a role in shaping our social behaviors. For example, you've got testosterone, often linked to aggression.
Yeah, the male hormone.
Right. But it doesn't necessarily make us more aggressive. What it seems to do is amplify existing social cues and motivations.
So if someone's already prone to anger, testosterone might turn up the volume, but it doesn't magically transform them into a rage monster.
Exactly. And then you've got oxytocin, sometimes called the love hormone, because of its role in promoting bonding and trust.
Oh, the love hormone. Okay, so this one must be all good, right?
But even oxytocin, with its reputation for warm fuzzies, can have a bit of a dark side.
Wait, really? The love hormone can make us act not so lovingly.
It's true. Studies have shown that while oxytocin can increase pro-social behavior towards our in-group, the people we identify with,
Right.
it can also make us more aggressive and distrustful towards those we perceive as outsiders.
Wow, that's so interesting. So even our biology is influenced by social factors, these group dynamics. Like, we're not just individuals, we're part of these complex social webs.
Exactly. And that brings us to another fascinating piece of this puzzle, the work of Franz Dewal.
Okay, and who's this?
He's a primatologist who really challenges that view that humans are inherently selfish.
Okay.
He sees tons of evidence for empathy and cooperation, not just in humans, but in other primates as well.
So back to the chimps. But this time we're looking for the warm and fuzzy stuff, not just the power struggles.
Precisely. Dewal argues that we've inherited this rich evolutionary legacy of empathy and cooperation. He spent decades observing primates, and he sees striking parallels between their behavior and our own, especially when it comes to those social emotions like empathy and fairness.
Okay, I'm ready for some heartwarming chimp stories.
Yeah.
Get me with the good stuff. Okay, so we're back, and I gotta say my brain is doing somersaults after all that talk about hormones, chimps, and people shocking each other. It's been a wild ride. But have we actually answered the question? Are humans deep down good?
Well, maybe the answer isn't a simple yes or no, Maybe it's more about recognizing just how complex human nature really is.
Yeah.
We're capable of incredible acts of kindness and compassion, but also shocking displays of cruelty and selfishness. We can be totally driven by self-interest, but also have this deep longing for connection and belonging.
It's like we contain multitudes or something.
Exactly. And our behavior is constantly being shaped by this interplay of our biology, our environment, and the choices we make every single day.
It's like we've been looking for a single switch,
Yeah.
A good setting or an evil setting. But what we've actually found is this incredibly intricate control panel with countless dials and levers all interacting in ways we might never fully grasp.
That's a great analogy. It really highlights the fact that there's no easy answer to this question. It's not about finding a single gene or a hormone that determines everything. We're much more than the sum of our parts.
Okay, so where do we go from here? I mean, we've explored empathy, cooperation, the power of meaning, and even the potential for blind obedience. Is there anything else we need to factor in?
Well, we've talked about the biological underpinnings of behavior. But now let's shift gears a bit and see how our actions are influenced by something a little closer to home. Our wallets.
Ooh, okay, this sounds intriguing.
We're going to delve into the world of behavioral economics and game theory to see what happens when morality and money collide.
I love those studies where people have to decide how to split a sum of money. You can practically see the gears turning in their heads like, do I be greedy or do I play fair?
Exactly. One of the classic experiments in this field is the ultimatum game.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
It's a pretty simple setup, but it reveals a lot about our sense of fairness.
Remind me how it works again.
Okay, so imagine you're given, say, $100 and you have to split it with another person. You get to propose the split however you like.
Okay.
But here's the catch. The other person can either accept your offer, in which case you both get the agreed upon amounts,
Right.
or they can reject it and nobody gets anything.
Oh, wow. So there's a risk involved.
Exactly. So if you're feeling greedy, you could offer them a tiny amount, like $5, and keep $95 for yourself.
Right. I mean, that's what a purely rational, self-interested person would do.
Right.
Maximize their own gains.
You'd think so. But here's the fascinating thing. In most experiments, people don't actually act that way.
Really?
Yeah. The proposers typically offer a much fairer split, often close to 50-50. And the responders, even though they'd be better off accepting any amount right, they're more likely to reject those unfair offers, even if it means losing out on some cash.
So people are willing to punish someone for being unfair, even if it costs them something. That's pretty amazing.
It is. It suggests that we're not just these cold calculating machines trying to maximize our profits. We also care about fairness and reciprocity.
But wouldn't a true selfish gene strategist just grab whatever they could get, even a tiny crumb, rather than risk getting nothing?
That's a great question. And it brings up the idea of reputation. In real-world situations, if you get a reputation for being greedy and unfair, people might be less likely to cooperate with you in the future.
All right, so it could backfire in the long run.
Exactly. So even from a purely self-interested perspective, there might be long-term benefits to maintaining a reputation for fairness.
It's like investing in your social capital. If people trust you to be fair, they're more likely to collaborate with you, which could lead to bigger rewards down the line.
Precisely. And this brings us to another really interesting piece of this puzzle, the role of social norms and punishment in promoting cooperation.
What?
You know, our sources highlight research showing that even those who might be tempted to act selfishly are more likely to cooperate when there are clear social norms against cheating and a threat of punishment for those who break the rules.
So it's like having a referee in a game. Knowing that someone's watching and that there are consequences for breaking the rules can keep people in line.
That's a great analogy, and it shows how powerful those social structures can be in shaping our behavior. It's not just about individual morality, it's about the systems we create to encourage cooperation and discourage selfishness.
It all circles back to Hobbes and his idea of the Leviathan, doesn't it? He believed that we needed a strong authority figure to keep our baser instincts in check.
Right. And while we might not need a king or dictator breathing down our necks, the principle still holds true societies function better when there are clear rules mechanisms for enforcing those rules and a shared understanding of what constitutes fair and acceptable behavior.
Wow. Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've looked at chimps and hormones and the Milgram experiment and even delved into the world of economics. But have we actually answered the question, are humans fundamentally good?
Well, I think the most important takeaway from all of this is that we are incredibly complex creatures. We have this capacity for both immense good and terrible evil. We're driven by self-interest, but also a yearning for connection and meaning. And our behavior is constantly being shaped by the interplay of our biology, our environment, and the choices we make every single day.
I like that quote from Carl Jung. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there's any reaction, both are transformed.
Exactly. And that transformation can be for better or for worse. It's up to us to choose the kind of impact we want to have on the world.
So maybe the real question isn't, are humans good or bad?
Yeah.
But rather, what kind of world do we want to create together?
I think that's a great way to put it. And I think that question, that challenge is something we all need to be grappling with every single day.
It's definitely given me a lot to think about. Thanks for joining us on this incredible exploration of human nature. And to all our listeners out there, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep striving to be the best, most compassionate version of yourselves. Until next time.